Meet the Candidates. I'm Ananya Tatakonda, a senior at Richard Montgomery High School and your 41st student member of the Board of Education. Before we meet the two candidates to serve as your 42nd SMOB, I'd like to take some time to express my deepest gratitude to you all for giving me the chance to serve you this year. This year, my goal has been to expand communication and access to advocacy through SMOB Minute updates, middle and high school visits, and town halls located both up county and down county. Hearing your voice and ideas in these platforms has inspired me to fiercely advocate for policies and resolutions that achieve the best outcomes for our students, even when they were not the most popular ideas on the table. This year, we allocated additional funds to hire more counselors, especially those who are bilingual. We hosted our first annual countywide mental health forum, and next year, we'll be pioneering a mental health day in every one of our schools because we must have open conversations about mental health to end the stigma. We continue to refine our restorative justice programs as we address the unjust racial disparities in student discipline. Through the implementation of new key facilities indicators, we're working for an equitable approach to school reconstruction and additions. Our capital improvements plan includes a funding request to do a comprehensive review of the state of bathrooms in all schools and the implementation of at least one water bottle filling station in every school, because these are basic needs. It also includes new safety and security measures because no student can be expected to learn in an environment where they feel unsafe. MCPS has adopted a new curriculum for students in grades K through 8. The curriculum especially includes texts by authors of diverse backgrounds and perspectives that reflect the immense diversity that our county prides itself on, because students feel most engaged in their education when it reflects who they are. Finally, the board has expressed its deep commitment to embodying the immense diversity in our county and equity at all of our schools. In September, we passed a policy change to especially consider student body diversity when drawing school boundaries. In January, I proposed a resolution to conduct a comprehensive boundary study examining overcrowding and de facto segregation that persist at adjacent schools. It is imperative that we conduct this examination and explore potential options to bring populations together, because we know that separate is inherently unequal. I'm fortunate to share that as one Montgomery County community, we've made history several times this past year. In November, we elected our first all-female Board of Education. We've come together to elevate the student voice on platforms locally, regionally, and nationally, as reflected in my ability to serve as the first SMOB to chair a Board of Education committee. Progress isn't easy, but milestones like these demonstrate that we must continue to unite around our common values and ideas to push for change. This is a tough job. The next SMOB, whoever they may be, will vote on a $4.5 billion budget, boundary changes, and every new policy in the largest school district in Maryland. As you consider who you want to be your next SMOB, think about who has stepped up to advocate for you in the past, who demonstrates a deep understanding of student issues, and who you believe has the grit, passion, and dedication to fight on behalf of all 163,000 MCPS students for ideas that might not always be the most popular ones on the table. It has truly been an honor to serve you all this past year. I continue to be optimistic about the direction of MCPS as I wrap up my term. That's all thanks to the immense support and engagement I've seen from incredible students like you. Now, let's meet our two candidates. And now, let's meet the candidates for the 42nd student member of the Board of Education. The two candidates elected at the February 27, 2019 SMOB Nominating Convention are Mr. Nate Tinbite and Ms. Zoe Tashayev. Mr. Tinbite is a grade 11 student at John F. Kennedy High School. He currently serves as president for the Montgomery County Regional Student Government Association and is a founding member of MoCo for Change, a student-led activism group. He also served as the MCR treasurer and a leader in the Minority Scholars Program. Ms. Tashayev is a grade 11 student at Clarksburg High School. She has worked in the Community Relations Department of the Montgomery County Regional SGA for 2 years, striving to connect the legislative work of MCR and the Board of Education to organizations in the community. Currently, she serves as the student representative on the Montgomery County Council of Parent-Teacher Associations Board of Directors, alongside advocates from all over the county. This past year, she's worked closely with the County Council and the Department of Transit to fight for your right to better transit, to expand the Kids Ride Free program, and push for better sidewalk and ride-on infrastructure up county. Welcome to both candidates. Today, we have a series of questions to ask and learn more about each of them and their vision of their work in this position. I'll ask each candidate to keep their responses to 1 minute so we have time to discuss multiple issues. Our first question today is, what do you believe is the most pressing issue facing MCPS students, and how do you plan to address it? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Tinbite.
In our county, our most challenging issue is the inequities present in almost every facet of our school system. We're constantly defined by numbers, test scores, and GPAs, and aren't set to the emotional and mental support that we need. Next year, we need to start off by investing in career pathways at the middle and elementary school level to allow each student to explore the fields that they may be interested in. Next, we need to make sure that we take steps towards expanding project-based learning and addressing the marginalization of the LGBTQ community, special ed, and students of color. Let's start off by improving literature lists in our English classes to include these groups and make authors and many more characters in them, because students can only be interested in the picture if they are part of it.
Thank you. Ms. Tashayev?
The most pressing issue facing our county is the disparity of opportunities among our 206 schools. Our programs aren't standardized, and our students are suffering as a result. ESOL students are thrown into a system and expected to write essays in a language that they know little about. And students that don't have technology access at home are disadvantaged in turning in assignments. We need to start by leveling the playing field. On March 7th, the County Council made an amazing stride to expand pre-education programs. We need to work with the County Council to ensure a universal pre-K. We need to make sure our ESOL program is fully staffed and that our ESOL educators can work with the students that they're trying to educate, because students can't be expected to learn a subject and learn a language at the same time without the proper support. We need to make sure every student has a Chromebook, and students who don't have Wi-Fi access at home are given portable Wi-Fi hotspots so they can use our technology and be on level with their peers.
Thank you. How will you work to bring more exposure to diverse post-secondary options, including college and career, to MCPS students? For this question, we'll begin with Ms. Tashayev.
Our college and career centers are fully equipped to help our students in their high school daily lives, but unfortunately not enough students utilize their resources. We need to instruct students on how to use the college and career center early on in high school education so that they're comfortable approaching their college and career readiness coaches with questions on what to do. We need to make sure that we're expanding knowledge of scholarships, not just to early high schoolers, but middle schoolers as well, because there's so much money available for students to take advantage of early on, but we just aren't doing it. And we need to make sure that no student has to worry about affording a higher education. We need to expand knowledge about CTE programs like Thomas Edison to 8th graders who are enrolling for high school next year, so they can get hands-on experience and an education tailored to the career that they choose to go into. But we can't forget that college isn't the only option. Some students may not choose to go to a four-year university, and that's okay. We have to support them in their endeavors and teach them life skills so that they are ready for the real world.
Great. Mr. Tinbite?
In MCPS, we need to make sure that there's the foundational support for whatever we want to do in our futures, whether that's college, a career, or both. We have to start off by expanding opportunities and programs like Thomas Edison High School, where students can experience hands-on training and receive certificates in fields that they are passionate in, like aerospace engineering and cybersecurity. We also have to work with Montgomery College to expand its MC² program that allows seniors to work on their campus and receive an associate's degree. Lastly, we need to aid our seniors by expanding the number of college workshops provided and by creating an MCPS scholarship database. It's on us to provide every student with the tools necessary to determine their college and career pathways.
Great. Our next question. Although they are necessary, budget cuts often reduce funding from many essential programs and academic areas. As we move into financially tumultuous times for our county, what would you be willing to cut from MCPS's $2.5 billion operating budget, and why?
In our operating budget, we have to ask ourselves what we should prioritize instead of what we should cut. Over the past few years, I fought for the full funding of our operating budget and worked on the Superintendent's Budget Steering Committee to prioritize teacher cultural competency trainings and mental health awareness programs. When we come as a collective to fight for the full funding of our budget, Then we'll be able to make sure that ESOL programs are never understaffed, that the arts and music are never shortchanged, and that there's an on-demand counselor in every school to address student emergencies. I'll work to preserve the programs most needed in our schools, above everything else, like extracurriculars and career pathways, because the educational needs of our student body should be prioritized, and we have to do our best to make sure that every student has a fair shot to succeed.
Great. Ms. Tashayev?
Budget cuts are a reality that we have to confront, unfortunately, especially right now. I believe that we need to pressure the county council to invest into better modern infrastructure and better ride-on routes so students have alternative ways of getting to school. This will reduce the demand for busing, and we can cut down on expenditures there. Also, busing from one end of the county to another is a huge drain on our resources. If we expand magnet programs and CTE programs like at Thomas Edison to other parts of the county, bring one to Seneca Valley, we won't have to bus students as far, and we can severely cut down on the fuel costs that we have in our county. But this issue is multifaceted because we also have to push for more funding. Governor Hogan has steadily been cutting Montgomery County's funds, and we have to put our foot down. We have to tell them that we cannot afford more budget cuts, especially in this time of exponential growth for our county.
Thank you. What programs and policies will you advocate for to make a positive impact on the mental health and well-being of every MCPS student?
Mental health is obviously one of the most serious and pressing issues that we have to address as a school system. And because it is such a serious issue, it deserves a serious response. And that's why my addressment to mental health is multi-pronged and has multiple steps along the way. The first and the easiest steps we can take right now to address mental health is free up our counselors. Right now they're overburdened by scheduling and at the high school level, college recommendations, and they're just not accessible to us. We need to assign these tasks to other staff in the building so that we are always the first priority to our counselors. We need to make sure school psychologists are a public face because all of you have a school psychologist that may rotate throughout the cluster, but most of you probably don't know who it is. In the long run, I want to expand wellness centers beyond Watkins Mill, Northwood, Gaithersburg, and Wheaton because mental health isn't just an issue at those 4 high schools. And I want to revamp our outdated health curriculum because right now it does not adequately prepare us to address the red flags we see in our peers.
Mr. Tinbyte?
Mental illness continues to serve as the epidemic of our generation. Our county needs to do a better job letting students know that if you need help, it's okay to ask for help. Next year, I'll fight my hardest to destigmatize mental health, starting with our younger brothers and sisters, by adding mental illness awareness to our middle school curriculum. And it's also time for us to expand wellness centers to every high school and increase the number of counselors and mental health professionals because we have an obligation as a county to provide the mental and emotional support for our students. Also, I'll fight to add more homework-free weekends in our schools, include funding for a recognition professional development program for our teachers, and expand awareness of psychologists in our schools because no mental illness, big or small, should block a student's will to achieve their best in a classroom.
Thank you. In order to enact policy changes or pass resolutions, you will need to have at least 4 other board members to agree with your proposals. How will you gain their interest so that their vote aligns with yours? Mr. Tinbyte?
Over the past few years, I've built working relationships and have been at the board table over a dozen times, fighting for issues to rebuild our infrastructure and hire more bilingual teachers in our schools. I've met with key officials at events and invited them to hear from you at student forums. At the state level, I've worked with our state senators and delegates to get passed a voter registration bill, which mandates at least 1 voter registration drive in every high school in the state of Maryland. And I've also worked to pass an affirmative consent bill in the state legislature last year, because all students should be taught that yes means yes and no means no. I've connected with them through social media and communicated the concerns of students through individual meetings. Working with you next year, I'll be ready to collaborate with the 7 elected board members to fight for the priorities that affect us.
Thank you. Ms. Tashayev?
I'm proud to say that I've worked on MCR for 2 years, and I already have established working relationships with our board members and our central office staff. But we need to drive home the fact that the resolutions that leave Rockville affect us first and foremost. There needs to be a student-first perspective when we're considering our resolutions. Parents and teachers have a stakeholder as well, but we need to make sure that students are the first consideration when we're observing. And the conversation goes both ways. We need to host town halls with our board members and our central office staff so that you have the opportunity to express your concerns to the people who make decisions. I want to host 4 town halls throughout the year, 1 every quarter and in different parts of the county. 1 in the Down County Consortium, 1 in the Northeastern Consortium, 1 in Rockville, and 1 in the Up County. So you have the opportunity to demand answers for the questions that have gone avoided.
Great, thank you. How do you plan on addressing school infrastructure issues, including school construction, building maintenance, technology access, and safety and security issues within a reasonable budget and time frame?
So that's a lot to unpack there. So I'll go through it one by one. Construction, I believe that we need to prioritize the schools that are falling apart. Just to name a few, I can think of Damascus, Wooten, Neilsville, SSI, to Eastern. The list goes on, and that's not even touching the elementary schools, which we have dozens of that need repairs. We need to prioritize these schools, but we also need to make sure that as we modernize our infrastructure, we don't let our schools fall to this state, and that we are doing constant updates to renovations so that we don't have to completely sweep over our infrastructure. In terms of technology, I want to make sure every student has a Chromebook. Halliwell's Middle School implemented this program and it works effortlessly. Every student has a Chromebook and no student has to worry about broken technology because they're taking care of their own tech. In terms of security, I want to make sure that we're expanding security staff and have magnets on our doors so that when we go into a lockdown drill, that our doors are automatically sealed. I think that the lockdown with options was a good start, but we need to clarify procedures so no student has any concerns as to what to do in case of an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Tinbite?
All of us deserve to feel emotionally and physically safe in our schools. That's why a group of my friends and I last year mobilized 5,000 students from the DMV to walk out and protest gun violence last year, calling on our leaders to implement common sense gun control legislation. When we then championed gun violence prevention on the national stage of March for Our Lives. These experiences that I've learned help me make sure that we can secure our schools and make them seem less like a prison. I'll fight to make sure that there's transparent communication between student complaints and administration. And I'll work to add more active shooter drills and reverse evacuations in our schools. And going to a school like Kennedy, I understand what it means to be in an outdated infrastructure, subpar athletic facilities, and overcrowded hallways. We all deserve 21st century buildings and materials that allow us to focus on our school.
Thank you. For years, the opportunity gap has greatly affected students of color in our county. Although MCPS has worked to address the issue through various initiatives, what solutions do you propose to close the opportunity gap?
The opportunity gap over the past few years has only continued to widen and continues to disproportionately affect students at all levels. We have to start off by addressing the fact that many students aren't prepared for college and career. Next year, I'll start by expanding ACES, a program which helps juniors and seniors prepare for college test prep and college applications. Next, we have to expedite the Chromebook rental program to all of our students because in 2019, whether or not a student has access to technology at home should never serve as a barrier to their success. We also need to place an emphasis on quantitative literacy classes, where we get to learn how to file our taxes and manage our money, because not every student will go to college, and it's on us to make sure that every student is prepared for financial success now and in the future.
Ms. Tashayev?
I mentioned at the start a few of the ways that we can address the achievement gap, expanding ESOL, expanding pre-K, and making sure every student has access to technology. But we need to do more as a county to address the tangible racial achievement gap and opportunity gap that we see in our schools. I want to expand ACES, but I want to expand it at the schools that need them most. Look, Blair has about 1,000 students more than Clarksburg, and yet both students have a 120 student capacity. That makes no sense, and yet that is the system under which we operate right now. If the point of the ACES program is to close the achievement gap, we need to focus those resources at schools where the achievement gap is most prevalent. I also want to expand minority scholars programs and gay-straight alliances to not just all high schools, but middle schools as well, because these organizations give students of marginalized community a place where they can advocate for the issues that are important to them, and we can involve them in the conversation as to how we can make our school system a better place.
Great. What is your message to students, particularly middle school students, who do not believe the SMOB represents them due to the disconnect between the SMOB and the students?
Look, I get it, really. 2 years ago, I was sitting in my government class, looking up at the Promethean board, looking at these two faces, thinking, who are these people? They don't represent me. And I know that most of the students in our county still feel that today. And that's why I'm making a commitment to visit you at your school so we can get to the root of the issues together. I'm not going to be able to speak to all 162,000 kids, but I can speak to every school and figure out where the priorities lie within our school system. And I mentioned earlier that the conversation works both ways. We need to make sure that you have the opportunity to take your concerns directly to the people who make the decisions by expanding town halls and making sure, more importantly, that they are accessible all over the county. So not just Rockville students have an opportunity to express their concerns.
Mr. Tinbite?
In our county, we have a huge disconnect between the SMOB and the students. And far too often, students only hear from the SMOB during the SMOB election and not the SMOB term itself. As president of the county SGA, I made sure that every school, every high school was represented on our executive board. And I plan on doing the same outreach to make sure that every school and groups of students are represented on the SMOB Advisory Council. I'll also visit every middle and high school, expand my social media through consistent live streams, reinvent the SMOB Minute by expanding the languages presented, and collaborate with other student-led organizations like MoCo Empower, the Minority Scholars Program, Black Cap, the Gay Straight Alliance, and MoCo for Change. At no point during my term will it ever be hard for you to hear from me or for me to hear from you.
Thank you. Montgomery County is incredibly large and diverse. With this in mind, how will your policies benefit every school and student demographic in the county?
As I've traveled this county, I've been privileged to learn about what makes each school special. Too often, we're given a one-size-fits-all education rather than a model that supports our unique needs and school cultures. Schools with greater needs deserve greater resources, and our county should support student-led clubs and activities. Through constant student feedback, I've heard and will continue listening to you to make sure that the board continues to push for equitable policies at all grade levels.
Ms. Tashayev?
You're absolutely right. Our county is insanely diverse. We have 162,680 kids, 500 square miles. And it's the diversity of not only our population, but the issues that we confront that makes this county unique. I know that we can't have a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's why I'm committing to visit every school, so I can get to the bottom of what issues are important to you, and we can tailor our policies to address your issues as effectively as possible. And while we do need to take a diverse approach as to how we can address the issues all around our county, there are some policies that we can enact that will benefit everybody. For example, diversifying our lunch menus. I've been eating school lunches for 12 years, right? And I remember in elementary school when we used to serve strawberry milk, cheese dippers, and tater tots. And in the 12 years I've been eating school lunches, our menus have only deteriorated. We need to look into locally sourcing our food, diversifying our menus, and making sure that we have diverse options, not just for regular eaters, but also vegetarians and vegans, and make sure we have nutritious and delicious options for everybody.
Thank you. What will you do to ensure funding is properly allocated to support all student interests? Ms. Tashayev?
Right now, our funding formula is based on population and seniority of staff, but we need to make sure it's needs-based. Schools that tout robust programs need more funding for those programs. We need to keep ESOL alive. We need to make sure that our ACES program is being expanded, but we also need to fund our special education programs more, because students who are being put at a disadvantage shouldn't be left behind, as they all too often are. We need to support our college readiness programs and support the students who have difficulty in a standard classroom setting.
Mr. Tinbite?
It's hard to craft a budget that addresses the needs of all students when all students are not consistently heard on the work that's happening. That's why I plan on working to expand the amount of student seats on the Superintendent's Budget Steering Committee. I also plan on hosting town halls with board members in every part of the county to make sure that they see what is happening in your schools and what you guys want to see done by our county. It's vital for us to make sure that student input is based in every single decision that's made for us, because it's the students' voices that should determine the students' futures.
Thank you. How do you believe you can continue the work previous SMOBs have invested?
Over the past few years, I've worked side by side with SMOBs, with our SMOBs to bring about change in our county. Inspired by these experiences, I'm running for SMOB because I know that our work is far from over, but I also know what it'll take to achieve our best. Working with SMOB, Matt Post, and Ananya Tatakonda, I helped lay the groundwork to expand technology, unblock our Wi-Fi, and help with a study that examines our school boundaries and capacities. Next year, we can raise the bar by modernizing communications through translated content and on the issues that we face every day brought to the board table.
Ms. Tashayev?
All too often, the advocacy that our SMOBs do goes unaddressed. Matt Post laid the groundwork to unblock the Wi-Fi for Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and I want to build off of this precedent by unblocking Snapchat on the high school level as well as Discord. On the middle school level, I want to work to unblock Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube, because a lot of students listen to music as they study, and barring that, it's just unfair for our middle school students. I also want to advocate for cell phones at lunch. I know that that's something that we've heard a lot from SMOBs over the year, but I plan on taking an innovative approach by working with school administrations one-on-one and getting to the root of why specifically cell phones are blocked. Montgomery Village Middle School just adopted this policy this year, and I know we can expand that to all middle schools around the county. Ananya just recently proposed a resolution to redraw the boundaries in our school system, and I plan on keeping that momentum forward so that we can address the utilization in our schools, making sure none of our schools are over capacity and that our schools reflect the diversity that we pride ourselves in this county.
Thank you. What do you see as your role as the student member of the board, and how will you innovate the position? How will you be different or unique from past SMOBs? Ms. Tashayev?
As the only student-elected county official, the SMOB has a larger responsibility than just working with the Board of Education. We need to prioritize all issues that students are impacted by every single day. Say you're trying to walk to school, but your school doesn't have a sidewalk in front of it. That's an issue that affects you. And while it may not be under the Board of Education's discretion, it is under the county councils. And that's why we have to work beyond the Board of Education, work with the county council and the state as well to prioritize all issues that affect you every single day. We want to expand sidewalks, kids ride free so we can ride the buses all the time, and better ride-on access so that no matter where you are, if you don't have access to a car, you can still get to where you need to go. And lastly, I want to make sure I'm prioritizing communication. I know I've stressed this time and time again, but I cannot stress enough how important it is. I will be an open ear. I may not be the first SMOB, but I will be your first SMOB.
Thank you. Mr. Tinbyte?
The SMOB serves as the most important voice on the Board of Education. He or she is tasked with handling policy work and is the bridge of communication between the students and the board, and vice versa. While our past SMOBs have been great, we still have a long path to go to ensure that no voice is left unheard in our school system. As a student in the Down County, I understand how it feels to attend a school with poor infrastructure, how it feels to use outdated Chromebooks and technology. I'll use my experiences to fight for the marginalized and underrepresented in our county. I'll be different from past SMOBs by being the first SMOB in over a decade who was African American. And diversity is our greatest asset in MCPS. And I'll work with other student-led organizations to empower students from all backgrounds to reciprocate the unique voices across this county to the board.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for our discussion. We encourage schools to invite the candidates to visit their schools and meet with students before the April 24th election. Each candidate will now have an opportunity to make a closing statement. Mr. Tinbyte will speak first.
Over the last 3 months, I've traveled our county to visit your schools, walk your hallways, and meet many of you face to face. You've taught me that while all of our schools are unique, we are binded by hope for unity and a desire for change, as we reach for a future where our zip code doesn't determine the quality of our education. During the past few years, I fought tirelessly for you as president of the county SGA and a founding member of MoCA for Change. And I've learned that change comes from the bottom up and not the top down. For far too long, we've been plagued by the status quo. But in this election, we as students can be the disrupting force for change. Let's make sure athletics are considered a PE credit, expand college access opportunities like ACEs, and bring driver's ed courses back to our high schools to make sure that all of us are equipped with real college and career options. Let's expand on mental health instruction and awareness in our middle school curriculums, increase gender-neutral bathrooms, and eradicate discriminatory dress codes because schools should support students, not the other way around. Let's double the number of student-led town halls and forums and broaden pathways to capture student feedback because we are the most important stakeholder in this county. But I can't do these things alone. Every social justice movement, every political revolution, and every change that has occurred in this nation has arrived by the power of the people. And with more than 80,000 of us, there is nothing that we can't achieve. So join my team, join the movement, and vote Nate for SMOB 2019.
Thank you. Ms. Tashayev?
All right, by now, you know the drill. You watch this video in your social studies class, click on one of two faces on election day, and then they vanish. 365 days later, the process starts again. But you should be the first priority of the student member of the Board of Education. Next year, we will put an end to the disconnect between the students and the county, between you and the people who make the decisions. All too often, we are left in the dark. Decisions on our communities are taken and we are not consulted. We know we have a pervasive achievement gap. We know our counselors are overburdened and inaccessible. We know our water is undrinkable, our food borderline inedible, and many of our schools unstable. We confront these issues every day, but they are left unaddressed. The solution starts with us. Together, we'll push to rebuild our neglected schools, lighten the load on counselors, expand wellness centers to all high schools in the county, and make sure school psychologists are a public face in their community. We'll address the mental health crisis in the county. We'll expand the ACES programs to the schools that need it, bring MSPs and GSAs to all middle and high schools, and better prepare our ESOL teachers to tackle the achievement gap. And we'll partner with community organizations to look into how to locally source our food, diversify vegan and vegetarian options, and yes, bring back strawberry milk. But this needs to be a student push, not a Rockville push. Connectivity is the backbone of progress. I promise to visit your school during my tenure. I hope I can earn your vote this April 24th so we can bring our collective voices to the Board of Education, so we can ensure there are no decisions about us without us. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Nate and Zoe. In closing, please listen carefully to a statement from Brian Kramer and Alexa Young, the Special Elections Administrators.
Hey everybody, my name is Brian Kramer and I'm a senior at Northwood High School and one of your Special Elections Administrators this year.
My name is Alexa Young and I'm a senior at Magruder High School, the other Special Elections Administrator.
We lead what's called the Special Elections Committee, which is a group of students from across Montgomery County charged with organizing and running the entire SMOB election. On February 27th, we had our nomination convention that was attended by over 400 student delegates from middle schools and high schools around the county. The diverse field of 13 candidates was narrowed down to our two finalists.
One of our two finalists will be elected by students in grades 6 through 12 to serve on Montgomery County's Board of Education as a full voting member. The Montgomery County SMOB is one of only two SMOBs in the entire state of Maryland to have full voting rights, giving us a unique opportunity for the student voice. Seniors also have the opportunity to vote and leave their legacy behind within MCPS.
This election has over 84,000 eligible voters, including outgoing seniors like ourselves. It's very important that everyone casts their vote in this process and has their voice heard. The SEC has developed many resources to learn about these two candidates and allow for all students to make an informed vote on Election Day, which is April 24th, 2019.
Not only have you seen the candidates speak on this program, but each school will receive a voter guide with detailed information on both candidates. And on Election Day, you will see a summary of their platform and ideas on the voting screen.
Please be sure to follow the Special Elections Committee on Instagram at mcr.sec, where we'll be giving even more information about the candidates and the election process.
Thank you all so much for listening. We can't wait to see you turn out to vote on April 24th.